Alleluia, Christ is risen.
Lord is with me. Alleluia.
Please be seated. Christ is risen, even though our gospelers' batteries might die in the middle, but we know the gospel, right? Jesus said, those men said, "Why do you look for the living among the dead?" They were in dazzling clothes, and they said that to those faithful, grieving women. Let's think about that for a moment. I don't think at that moment those women were looking for the living, were they? They were looking for Jesus, their friend who had died. They were carrying spices. In another gospel, it's a heavy load, 100 pounds, it says, in John's gospel. Those women had left the terrible events of Friday. Their friend had died. Injustice prevailed. They had gone to do what we often do in the midst of grief and a broken world. We begin to take care of things and to prepare for the next day. You see, they weren't looking for the living, but they did not find the dead, did they? Mary Magdalene and Joanna and Mary, the mother of James, they go through so many emotions in a few short verses. They were perplexed and then terrified, and then they bow their heads, not in awe, but in exhaustion. Have you ever done that? It's the same word used in John's gospel when Jesus bows down his head and gives up his. Then they remember, they return, they tell their friends, they're ignored, except by Peter, who goes and checks it out, and then he goes home amazed. Alleluia and amen. This Easter morning doesn't quite get us to joy. I think that is perhaps our work, our preparation, our gift, our task. It is too soon, too new, too sudden on that morning. And when I picture those women and the spices that they carried that morning, I see this very familiar mix of hope and duty, of grief and disappointment, the human things that are a part of all of us. I wonder if their hands smelled of those burial spices. The word used for that is aromata. It means fragrant and heavy, things that smell good, from our word aroma. And of course, we know about that aromata from the Christmas carols we sing about wise magi from the east who bring what seem to be useless birthday presents to the baby Jesus, right? Remember? Frankincense and myrrh. Myrrh, I bring a bitter perfume, breathes a life of gathering gloom, sorrowing, sighing, bleeding, dying, sealed in the stone-cold tomb. They were exotic spices. There was in ancient times, in those times, a port called Aromata. It's on the east coast of what is now Somalia. It's called Spice Port. Far away from this tomb, far away from us, but part of a world that is connected across miles and time. Our world is more connected than we know or understand. And at that spice port, its main export is frankincense, was frankincense. I wonder if this came from there. It was surely expensive with or without tariffs, I might add, especially for women who had given up everything to follow a prophet through towns and countrysides. They followed him because he gave them something new. He gave them hope. What was this hope? It was his very life. He was born with the angels singing, yet the poorest shepherds were the first to see him and sing about him. He was a teacher who knew the law, but even more deeply knew the mercy of God within it. An innocent man for whom due process fails and he stands and dies for a higher good, a better truth, a common good. This Jesus told story after story of undeserved grace and kindness in a very partial world. And by partial world, I mean that in an Orwellian sense, that some people are somehow more better than others, right? The powerful, the insiders, the winners, the ones with wealth or the right passports. And yet Jesus offered healing for untouchables, a way out for those consumed by debt, a second chance, or a 57th chance for sinners. Take your pick. The blind see, the lame walk, a peaceable kingdom in a war-laden world. As Peter says in Acts, an impartial, loving God. Jesus gave those women and those disciples a way of love in a world that is sick with sin and selfishness. A world that is sick with sin and despair. A world that again and again breaks our hearts and brings us to see only the dead things. And we might even begin to believe that some things are beyond hope. And then Easter comes. Why do you look for the living among the dead? There is nothing and no place in this world that is so dusty and dead and devastated that God will not bring new life. Resurrection is here for us as it was for those women and later the disciples. But those women carried what they knew they had to. I think of them carrying that weight. It was the darkest hour of the morning. What do we carry? We carry our own lives, our hopes, our stories, our hurts, our loves. Those we love and see no longer. We bring ourselves, we bring our pounds of expectation and experience. Because that is who we are. That is what we have in this world. And this is the moment this Easter. The women arriving at the tomb, they cannot do what they had planned. They cannot do what they had planned, anoint his body, because he is not there, he is risen. And so they are open, or perhaps broken open, with perplexity and terror and exhausted awe to something new. That is where the bravery, the true bravery of the gospel is. In order to embrace Jesus, they have to be open to a new understanding of reality. And this reality does not deny the past or our needs or our humanness. It is such a gift that these women are named and known then and now, the first preachers and hope bearers. Easter is real when we bring our real and full selves to look into death and despair and destruction and be open to something new with hope. So last summer, I was invited by a couple of friends to bless their new home after theirs was destroyed in the Marshall Fire. It is a story all too common in our climate-changing world, isn't it? Everything they knew, like so many others, had been reduced to ash. It was the home where their sons had grown up. They had in the neighborhood some gorgeous bearded irises that grew in the front yard year after year, peach and purple colored. The pride of the neighborhood, they were beautiful. And then there was the fire, and on that very same land, nothing remained. It was the same place, the same land, the same people, the same. And yet it wasn't. My friend's wife dug through the ashes in a moment of just tremendous grief and despair, and she found the burned bulbs of those iris. She did it like those women who prepared those spices full of grief. And then she took them to the garden where they lived for 2 temporary years. She planted them. The first year, nothing came up, and then the second year, stalks came up, but no flowers. And then, just as they were preparing to move into their new home, they bloomed again last summer. I remember it. It was a really hot July day, and I stopped, because that's what you do, and I bought and brought some forlorn grocery store flowers in the way that only, late on a Thursday evening can grocery store flowers be. And the house was so new and so pristine. You could smell the paint. It was clean. We were in bare feet. We didn't want to touch anything almost. And there were these beautiful peach and purple irises also on the counter next to my little hopeful bouquet. And so they told me this story about digging in the dirt after the fire. Hands covered with ash that smelled like destruction, and then planting, waiting, hanging on to a new life and a new home that they didn't choose or want, and yet accepted. I could feel the depth of loss that they had carried for so long. And so when we prayed, house blessings are often joyful celebrations with lots of noise and lots of people. But they had wanted just to pray together with a friend. They had built their new house with considerations toward growing old together. And so those prayers we prayed were solemn and good, and we wept, even though it was joyful. And after that, last fall, his wife again planted those very same iris bulbs in front of their new house. Old dirt, the same dirt, some ash. They're blooming now. He told me, I texted him this week for help remembering this story. And then he went on to say this. He said, beneath the ground, burned over and ashen, those bulbs held new life. Life that the tragedy of the fire could not extinguish. But we had to trust. We had to trust that the bulbs were still there and that life could emerge out of the ashes. And we had to do a bit of gardening. This new life needs tending. That is what we do then as people of this Easter, of the new creation. Jesus and his resurrection bring God's new life, which cannot be extinguished. And every year, once again, we have the opportunity to discover, to tend, to nourish, to watch, to wait for it to flourish around us. So this Easter, don't be afraid. Be brave. Don't be afraid to carry yourself into a new reality. Whether it's in your own lives or in the world we see around us, be brave and look for things that live, like love and joy and strength and justice that comes from God. Plant and tend the things of God, mercy for yourself and others, justice and dignity for all people, belovedness for those who live in shame and sorrow. Like those women, seek community and common ground and common good because we need each other. Boy, do we need each other. When you are sad, mix those dutiful spices with your friends and keep your Sabbath rest, and then do what you think you need to do. And then be amazed. Be amazed when God turns it upside down and something is alive in a new way. Be fed and nourished and loved so that you can fight the good fight, the big fight. Not the small and petty fight, I remind you. The good fight, the big fight, right? Let us love. Alleluia and amen.
Amen.